This is a fairly straightforward concept. If you're familiar with ASP.NET development, it's similar in a way to a master page. And what it really is it's kind of like a template. So every page has a shell, and when you load that page up, you put it inside that shell. So for example, on Stems, we've got the header section, we've got these menus, and then we've got the menus at the bottom as well. Oops. One second. So you've got the footer, your email sign up, your copyright notice. Obviously you don't want to have to rewrite that, include that in every single page. That's all part of what's called a shell. So let's just take a look at this Stems default shell now. And you can see when you click on it, a shell is also a type of content. And you click on the Sites menu, and you can see it's got the same sort of options, the same sort of values as a regular piece of content does. So in our case, we don't have any build entities assigned. Reason being, for the shell, there's nothing that needs to be loaded dynamically directly into the shell out of the database. So these two are left blank. And that means that, the C# will grab the HTML for the shell, but because there's no entities, there's no stored procedure it needs to execute, it'll just spit that HTML directly out, add it into the template, and return it to the user without doing any replacements. Well, it'll still check if there's any replacements it needs to do with values from the URL or values from the, just system values like the content number. But it won't need to hit the database, and so, you can avoid that hit on performance. So basically, when things are executed, the first thing that what will do is we'll get a list of all the objects that need to be loaded, starting with the shell. It'll execute whatever stored procedures are associated with the shell. Then take that HTML, build that as the initial stage of the page, and then it'll actually load the main page and put that information, embed that HTML directly into the shell. There's also a number of other things such as menus, catalogs, list boxes that also get populated in a similar way. I'll talk about those individually, and then we'll kind of summarize about the way that it just takes them all, adds them all up, slowly builds the HTML, and then returns it to the user. So on Stems, and JThomas is pretty much the same in this regard. You have a number of different shells, but not a whole lot of them. So if we just go to all content, oops. Sorry, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. We go to all content, select shell as the type. There's a few on here that aren't used a whole lot. The main one is going to be the Stems default shell. Probably at least 90%, maybe 95% of the pages on Stems use this. And that's just the default look and feel you're used to. Your logo, your phone number, your live support, different menus, your name, these interfaces, all of that. That's all part of the default shell. But we also got a couple others which are used from time to time. For example, the Stems report shell. It's got a slightly different layout. Just click on it. The main part being this menu here is included in that shell, so that is available on all report pages on the Stems website. A couple other important ones to mention is a blank shell. A blank shell is just what it says. It's got nothing, basically completely empty. All it's got is this body tag, and that body tells you where in the shell to put the HTML for the actual page. So just to show you that in the default shell, let's view the HTML there. We got some CSS and some code up here. We include some menus, have some links. And then somewhere on here, got the body tag. And that tells you this is where I want you to stick the HTML or the page I'm actually looking inside this shell. To build up the header, build up the footer, and replace this body tag with whatever comes back for the page itself. So that body tag needs to be included in every shell or it will not work. As I said, in case of stands, and JTOMs is similar, most cases you're using either the default shell, the report shell, or the blank shell. Blank shell is often used for, there's one more, which is the email shell, which is used quite regularly. That's got a different header that's used when we send out emails. It obviously can't have any JavaScript in it, and the CSS needs to be basically inline. You can't have any links to exterior CSS files, that sort of thing. So it's a very stripped down version. Very little HTML, not a lot in it. It's just used to send out emails with your standard standard stems header. Of course, you can create as many as you want. If you decide you want a different look and feel on a certain page, you can do that. But then having it this way, where you're using the same shell throughout most of the site, gives you a lot of power to make changes to the entire site quickly if that's what you're looking for. So if you know, for example, you're on this main shell here, and you notice that your copyright says 2011, for example. This is something you might actually want to change. You could go into your shell, you could find that footer, and you could just change that to say 2012. And now every site on the page will have that change. So again, as I go through this, I want to just please remember, anything I tell you for the rest of this section that you can do for a regular webfoot page, you can do for the shell as well. So that's kind of an ongoing theme that we'll talk about as we discuss the other types of things that can be included on a page. Most of these things are pages themselves, and what you end up with is a page inside another page. So it's sort of a nested hierarchy. You build things up by combining a bunch of different elements together that each have their own entities, each have their own HTML, their own type of behavior. You put them all together, come back with one unified HTML page, and that's what the end user sees. So it's very compartmentalized. You can keep the different pieces separate, reuse them, in different combinations, and get kind of a lot of different behavior without having to actually make a lot of changes.